Under the Neon Moon. Las Vegas Stories.
The airport is always lying. It pretends it's a place you pass through. Polished floors, gate numbers, the soft hiss of air conditioning like a lullaby for people who don't want to think. But McCarran, sorry, Harry Reid now, old habits die hard, has never really been about leaving. It's about the pause before you do. It's about the tiny last pocket of Vegas that clings to you when you're trying to get clean and go home. That night it was 1:30 in the morning, and the place was full in a way it shouldn't have been. Red Eyes are usually a quiet tribe, tired families, folks in hoodies with neck pillows, business travelers who refuse to admit they're human. This wasn't that. This was a crowd that looked like they'd been poured out of a show. Glitter on cheeks, wristbands, a guy with a satin jacket that said Residency Finale across the back. A woman in heels she'd already kicked off, walking barefoot like the carpet owed her something. People carrying merch bags and the kind of energy you only get when the lights cut and the music stops and you realize the night is ending whether you're ready or not. A digital board over the main concourse did that slow, cruel scroll. Delayed. 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 I stopped under it with my duffel still hooked on one shoulder, and I watched the words like they might change if I stared hard enough. They didn't. A tired voice came over the PA. Due to airspace restrictions and ongoing coordination with local authorities, several flights are delayed. We appreciate your patience. Airspace restrictions. Local authorities. Only in Las Vegas do those two phrases get used together at 1 in the morning like it's normal. A security officer in a yellow vest moved past me with a walkie pressed to his cheek, shoulders tight. Two Metro guys stood near the escalators, not doing much except being visible. A line at Starbucks, yes, Starbucks at 1:30, curved like a snake that was too stubborn to die. I checked my phone. No new texts. The last one was from my sister 2 hours ago. You still coming? Dad's been asking. I started to type something reassuring, then stopped. What do you say? Yes, I'm coming, assuming Vegas doesn't decide to turn the sky into a crime scene. I put the phone back in my pocket and looked for my gate. D, all the way down. As I started walking, a man's voice behind me said too loud. It was the drones. I'm telling you, it was the drones. Another voice irritated. It's always drones. Everything is drones now. In Vegas, even your conspiracy theories come with show lighting. I kept moving, slipping between people, past a slot machine bank that looked like a joke someone forgot to remove. The machines blinked their little promises to nobody. A woman in a cocktail dress sat at one anyway, feeding it bills with the calm dedication of someone watering a dying plant. I'd spent most of the last 8 years in a casino, not as a player. On the other side of the magic, back of house security, then floor, then supervisor, I knew the real Vegas, the one that smells like bleach and fryer oil at 6 in the morning, the one where you can tell a man's mood by how he walks toward the cashier. The Vegas that never makes it into postcards. And still, the airport did something to me. It always did. It made me feel like I was trying to sneak out of a party without saying goodbye. My gate was crowded, every seat taken, people sitting on the floor, leaning against walls. The screen above the desk read, Flight 418 to Seattle, delayed, new departure, 3:55 a.m. 2 hours and 20 minutes. At least. A woman at the desk was fielding questions with the kind of smile you wear like armor. A man in front of her kept saying, I have a connection, like it was a spell. I found a patch of wall near a charging station and set my duffel down. My shoulder ached. My eyes felt sanded. I wasn't dressed for a flight. I was dressed for a shift that ended late and didn't go well. Black shoes, dark jeans, a plain gray shirt under a jacket that made me look like I belonged anywhere people didn't want trouble. I planned it that way. I always did. It was easier to move through crowds when you didn't look like you were anyone's target. I plugged my phone in, leaned back, and tried to decide what to do with 2 hours. That's when she spoke to me. Not with a hi or a, excuse me, like most people. Just a simple, tired statement like we were already mid-conversation. They're saying it could be longer. Her voice was low, slightly husky from either cigarettes or shouting over music. Not drunk, though, just wrung out. I turned my head. She was standing a few feet away with a carry-on upright like a loyal dog, mid-30s maybe. Dark hair pulled into a loose knot that looked like it had been neater once. She wore a black hoodie over a dress that might have been expensive before it got creased by hours of sitting. Sneakers, practical, that alone made her stand out. She had a lanyard on, one of those thick fabric ones with a plastic badge that had been flipped around so I couldn't read it. Her makeup was mostly gone, but the line work around her eyes was sharp, like she knew how to make herself seen under stage lights. I nodded toward the screen. That's what they always say. She gave a small laugh that didn't reach her eyes. You sound like you live here. Close enough. She moved a little nearer, careful not to invade my space. Her eyes flicked to my duffel, then my jacket, like she was cataloging. Not judging, just reading. Work? She asked. Yeah. Casino? I hesitated, then nodded. Security. Of course, she exhaled. Vegas has security guys the way other cities have pigeons. Pigeons don't have radios. Some of them do, she said, and that earned a real smile. Quick, then gone. She looked past me at the gate crowd, then back at my face. You heading home or running away? The question was too direct to be casual, but her tone made it sound like a joke she'd told herself 100 times. I shrugged. Both. She considered that, then nodded like it made sense. I'm Tess, she said, holding out a hand. The handshake was firm, warm. Her grip didn't hesitate. Nick, I said. I don't know why I gave her my real name. I usually don't. It's a habit from work. Names are leverage. Names are how people find you later when they're mad or desperate. But she didn't feel like that kind of person. She pulled her hand back and leaned her shoulder against the wall beside the charging station. The light overhead made her look tired in a way that was honest. So, she said, airspace restrictions. What's your guess? I glanced at her. You asking as a civilian or as someone who already knows? She laughed again, softer. I don't know anything. I've just been listening. Listening to what? She nodded toward the mass of people. Everyone. It's like, you can tell what kind of night they had by what story they pick. I looked around. She wasn't wrong. A group of guys in matching polo shirts were arguing about how much money they'd lost like it was a contest. 2 women were taking selfies with the delay screen behind them, like they wanted proof they'd suffered. A man in a suit was pacing, jaw tight, like the delay was a personal insult. I said, my guess? Something happened on the strip. They shut down part of the airspace. It happens more than you think. She tilted her head. Like what? A helicopter crash? No, that would be on the news. More like a drone show that got out of its lane. Or someone flying something they shouldn't. Or a stunt. Her eyes narrowed slightly. A stunt. Vegas makes money on stunts. Yeah, she said, like the word tasted bitter. We stood there for a moment, listening. The airport had that constant layered sound, rolling wheels, distant announcements, random laughter that didn't match the hour. Tess pointed at my phone. You charging because you need it, or because it makes you feel busy? I snorted. Both. Same. She pulled her own phone from her pocket, looked at it, then didn't plug it in. I've got 83%. I'm just trying to decide what to do with my hands. That was the first thing she said that felt like a confession. I watched her fidget with the lanyard, twisted around her fingers. She had restless hands, the kind that belonged to someone used to doing something with them, working, performing, making. Where you coming from? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her gaze went to the crowd again, then back to me. From a room full of people who were screaming my name, she said. I blinked. She smiled like she'd said something ridiculous. Not because I'm famous, because they were mad. Ah, I said carefully. Customer service. Something like that. I waited. It didn't feel like the kind of story you pry out of someone. But Tess didn't seem like she brought herself to this gate wall to be silent. She said, I work for a production company, live events, corporate mostly, conferences, conventions, that kind of thing. Vegas is full of those. Exactly, she nodded. We had a big one this week. Big client, big personalities, they wanted everything perfect. And it wasn't. She laughed once, sharp. It never is. But tonight was. She paused, searching for the word. Tonight was special. What happened? She pressed her lips together, then shrugged. One of the final acts had a surprise element. Not my call, not my design. It involved drones. I stared at her. Tess raised both hands slightly, palms out, like surrender. Before you say it, yes, I know. I felt a slow grin tug at my mouth. So it was the drones. It was the drones, she sighed. They were supposed to stay over the lot behind the venue, a controlled path. FAA approvals, the whole spiel. But somebody, decided it would be more cinematic if they swept out toward the strip for the last 30 seconds. And they didn't coordinate. They coordinated, Tess said, voice flat, with a guy who said he coordinated. And he probably did, in some way, in some world, but not in the one where the airport is 10 minutes away and the airspace is already a knife fight between tour helicopters and private jets. So they shut it down. Yeah, she said. Ground stop, restrictions, everyone's delayed. And I'm standing there like, cool, great, my bad, everybody. Her face went blank for a beat, then she shook her head. I don't even want to tell you what the client said. It's not worth repeating. I nodded slowly. You were the nearest person they could blame. Exactly. Tess looked down at her sneakers. And I'm good at being the nearest person. There was something heavy under that line, but she didn't let it land. She flicked her eyes back up and forced a lighter tone. So, that's why your flight is delayed. You're welcome. I chuckled, but it came out tired. Well, if it makes you feel better, I've had nights where one drunk guy can shut down half a casino. Chaos travels. Tess looked at me curious. You have stories. Too many. Tell me one, she said like a dare. Short, we've got time. I glanced at the delay screen again. 2 hours. I could have said no. I could have stared at my phone, pretended I was busy. That's what I usually do. People are messy, and I deal with messy for a living. But there was something about Tess, maybe the way she owned the mistake without excusing it, maybe the way she stood like she was waiting for someone to push her and she was braced, something that made talking feel easier than silence. I said, okay, short one. She leaned in slightly, attentive. A few months ago, I started, we had a guy at the baccarat tables who was losing in a way that didn't make sense. Tess smiled. That's most guys. Yeah, but this one was calm, too calm. He'd lose 10 grand like he was paying a parking ticket. No anger, no sweat, just polite. And that's suspicious? In Vegas? I said. Absolutely. Tess nodded. Fair. So I watch him. I'm not the floor guy, but I've got eyes, and I notice something. Every time he gets up, he goes to the restroom, comes back, buys in again. Always the same amount. Tess said, he was laundering money. Exactly, I pointed at her. He was using the casino as a washing machine. He was losing on purpose in a way that looked like gambling. And you caught him? Not me, I said. Compliance did. We flagged it, and the suits handled it. But the part that stuck with me was when we told him he couldn't play anymore. Tess's brows lifted. He freaked out? No. I shook my head. He smiled and said, of course. Picked up his chips. Left. That's it? That's it, I said. And the next day, our housekeeping supervisor got a call from a woman who'd found a bag in a room trash can. Inside were receipts, cash, a burner phone, and a kid's drawing. Tess's expression shifted. A kid's drawing? Yeah, I swallowed. Stick figures, a sun, a house. In the corner it said, "Come home, Daddy." She stared at me for a long moment, like she was watching something play behind my eyes. "What did you do with it?" she asked. "We gave it to Metro," I said. "That's what you do." "And?" I shrugged. "And I don't know. That's the point. Vegas eats stories and doesn't spit them back out. I just think about that drawing sometimes." Tess didn't speak for a few seconds. Then she said quietly, "You didn't tell that like a tough guy story." "I'm not a tough guy." Her mouth twitched. "You are, a little." "Maybe on paper." I looked away. "In real life, I'm a guy who can't stop thinking about a piece of paper a kid colored with crayons." Tess nodded like she understood exactly. She turned her lanyard in her fingers again. "Okay," she said. "My turn." I glanced at her. "You don't have to." "I want to," she said. "But I'm going to make it short, too." "Deal." She took a breath, then said, "When I was 22, I came to Vegas because I wanted to be the kind of person who belongs in Vegas." "That's a thing?" "It is when you're from a place where the biggest event of the year is a county fair," Tess said. "I thought Vegas was proof that life could be loud." I listened. "I got a job as a stagehand at a small venue," she continued. "Not glamorous, but I loved it. I loved watching the machinery, how a spotlight turns someone into a god for 2 minutes, how music makes people feel like they're in love with strangers." She smiled, faint. "I met a guy there. He was older, cool. He told me I had talent and that talent mattered. I believed him because I wanted to." I felt my jaw tighten. I'd heard the shape of this story before. Different names, same bones. Tess said, "He didn't hit me or scream at me. Nothing obvious. He just kept moving the goalposts. Kept telling me I was almost there. Almost good enough. Almost ready." She shrugged. "I wasted 3 years trying to become what he wanted. And when I finally realized it, I wasn't even mad. I was just tired." Her eyes lifted to mine. "That's why tonight made me so angry. Not the drones, not the delay, the way the client yelled at me. Because it felt familiar." "Yeah," she said simply. "Because it was the same voice, the same tone. You messed it up. You're not good enough. Fix it." I exhaled slowly. "So you're leaving?" Tess's gaze drifted down the concourse. "Maybe." I watched her. "Seattle?" "No." She nodded toward the screen. "I'm on your flight, but Seattle isn't home. It's a place I'm borrowing." "Borrowing?" She shrugged. "I have a friend up there. She said I can crash for a while. Figure out what I want." I nodded. "That sounds like leaving." "It is." Tess looked back at me. "And it isn't. Because Vegas doesn't really let you go. It lets you take a few steps, and then it calls you back with something." I almost laughed, because that was too accurate. But it wasn't funny. The gate agent's voice came on. "Attention passengers for flight 418 to Seattle. We will provide an update in approximately 30 minutes. Tess rolled her eyes. 30 minutes is their favorite lie. "You called the airport a liar first," I reminded her. "Because I'm perceptive." "You're also responsible for the drones," I said. Tess pointed at me. "Allegedly." I smiled, and she smiled back, and for a moment the delay didn't feel like punishment. It felt like time, which was dangerous. Time is dangerous in Vegas. It makes you think things can happen that shouldn't. Tess glanced at my duffel. "So why are you going to Seattle?" I hesitated. This was where I usually deflected, joked, changed the subject. Work teaches you to keep your private life private. But Tess had already given me enough that it felt cheap not to offer something back. "My dad's sick," I said. Her face softened immediately, not pitying, just attentive. "What kind of sick?" she asked gently. "Heart," I said. "He had a scare. They stabilized him, but My sister says he's not bouncing back. Tess nodded. That's why you're leaving. Yeah? I looked down at my hands. I told myself I couldn't get off work, that it was complicated, that the schedule. It's always complicated, Tess said quietly. I looked up. She added, not because you don't care, because you're scared. That landed too clean, like she'd seen through the armor and named the soft part. I swallowed. Maybe. Tess leaned her head back against the wall, eyes half closed. I was supposed to fly out last month. And you didn't. She opened her eyes. Because I kept thinking if I stayed one more week, I could make it better. And could you? Tess let out a slow breath. No. We sat with that. Two strangers leaning against an airport wall at 2 a.m, admitting things you usually only admit to your steering wheel. A woman in a bright sequin jacket walked by, dragging a suitcase that squealed. She looked like she'd been dipped in glitter and regret. Tess watched her pass with a strange tenderness. I love her, Tess murmured. Who? The whole type, Tess said. The people who come here and go too hard because they think the night will fix them. You don't think it does? I asked. Tess looked at me, serious. I think the night can do a lot, but it can't fix you. It can just show you what's already there. I nodded slowly, because I'd seen that too. Every night in every face. A group of convention guys near the gate started chanting something, some in joke, and then laughing like it was the funniest thing ever. Tess winced. Do you want to get out of here? She asked. I glanced around. Where? There's a bar, she said like she knew. And of course she did. Airports always have bars, and Vegas airports have bars like they're afraid sobriety will cause panic. I hesitated. I've got to be on alert if they board early. Tess nodded. We'll stay close. Just, let's sit somewhere with a drink. Or coffee. Anything that isn't this fluorescent purgatory. I should have said no. I should have stayed at the gate. I should have been responsible. But something in me, the part that was exhausted of being responsible every day, wanted to move. Okay, I said. One drink or coffee? Tess smiled. You're fun. I'm cautious, I corrected. That's what cautious men tell themselves so they don't have to admit they're fun, she said, and her smile this time stayed. We walked together down the concourse, weaving through clusters of delayed passengers. Tess moved with purpose, like she knew the rhythm of crowds. I stayed slightly to her left, instinctive positioning. Old habit, protect the side, watch the flow. You do that? She noted. Do what? The thing where you walk like you're planning for an emergency, Tess said. I glanced at her. It's how you keep people from getting hurt. Or how you keep yourself from getting surprised. I didn't answer, because she wasn't wrong. The bar was half lit, open, not busy. A bartender looked up, bored, then perked slightly when he saw Tess's lanyard. Rough night? He asked, like he already knew. Tess gave him a look. You have no idea. He nodded sympathetically, like he'd been yelled at by a client too. What'll it be? Tess looked at me. You choose. I blinked. Why me? Because you look like you always choose, she said. The bartender raised an eyebrow, amused. I said, 2 coffees, black. Tess's mouth opened in mock outrage. Coffee? At a bar? The bartender chuckled and started pouring. I respect it. Tess leaned in toward me as we took 2 stools. You're one of those men. Which men? The men who've seen enough to know alcohol doesn't solve anything, she said. I looked at her. You're judging me. I'm admiring you, she corrected, then paused. Maybe. The coffee came. It smelled like it had been brewed at midnight and kept warm out of spite. I didn't care. I needed the heat. Tess wrapped her hands around the cup like it was a hand warmer. For a while, we just watched the airport through the bar's open front. People drifted by like ghosts. The lights made everyone look slightly unreal. Tess said, So what do you do in casino security? Like, what's an average night? I snorted softly. There's no average night. Fine, she said. Tell me a typical weird night. I thought. Okay, typical weird night is a man trying to convince me his card counting is a religious practice. Tess laughed, real and loud enough that two people turned to look. You're joking, she said. I wish. She shook her head. Tell me more. So I did. I told her about the guy with the laminated prayer cards, about the drunk bachelor party that tried to start a fight with a statue, about the woman who cried because the slot machine spoke to her. Tess listened like she was watching a show. Sometimes she leaned forward, elbows on the bar. Sometimes she laughed. Sometimes she just shook her head like she couldn't believe the city existed. Then she started giving her own stories, and the more she talked, the more I could hear the shape of her life, moving venue to venue, making other people's fantasies work, cleaning up chaos while smiling. Here's the thing, Tess said at one point, swirling her coffee like it was whiskey. People think events are about magic, but it's just logistics. It's people doing math and lifting heavy things while someone else takes credit. Sounds familiar, I said. Tess's eyes met mine. Right? We shared that look, the look of two people who live behind curtains. After a while, Tess's phone buzzed. She checked it, then groaned. What? I asked. She turned the screen toward me. A news alert. FAA issues temporary flight restrictions near Las Vegas Strip following unauthorized drone incursion. Under it, a blurry video thumbnail of a swarm of lights drifting too close to the bright spine of the strip. Tess covered her face with one hand. I'm going to be in a headline. You're going to be a footnote, I said. The headline will be about Vegas being crazy. Tess dropped her hand. That's what scares me. What? That I can do something stupid that affects thousands of people, and the city will just absorb it, she said. No real consequences, just another weird Vegas night. I thought about the kids drawing again, about the way stories disappear. I said, Vegas is good at swallowing consequences. Tess's eyes searched my face. Have you ever wanted to leave for real? I held her gaze. Yes. And I didn't. Tess nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer. Why? She asked. I looked down at my coffee, now lukewarm. Because I'm good at my job. Because my apartment is cheap. Because my friends are here. Because, when you work nights, you start to feel like you're part of a secret city. Tess smiled. The city of people awake at 3 a.m. Yeah, I said, and because leaving feels like admitting something. What? That I let the place shape me, I said. Tess was quiet for a moment. Then she said, It did. It shapes everyone. Even the ones who swear it doesn't. I sighed. So why are you leaving? Tess looked past me, out at the concourse. Her reflection in the bar mirror looked older than she did in person. Because I'm tired of being the nearest person, she said. I didn't push, but something in me wanted to know the deeper thing. Nearest to what? I asked softly. Tess's jaw tightened. Her fingers tapped the coffee cup. Nearest to blame, she said. Nearest to other people's needs. Nearest to chaos. Nearest to men who promise the world and then ask you to carry it. There it was again, the line that wasn't just about drones. She added, quieter, nearest to the version of myself that keeps thinking if I do everything perfectly, someone will finally treat me gently. My throat tightened. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound like a cheap movie line. So I didn't give her one. I said simply, That's a hard way to live. Tess's eyes shimmered. Not tears, just that glassy look you get when someone says something true in a voice that doesn't demand anything. Yeah, she whispered, it is. The bartender glanced our way, then looked away again, respectful. Airports are full of small private moments that don't belong to anyone else. My phone buzzed, battery finally charged. A text from my sister. Any update? I typed, Delayed, still coming. Then, after a second, I added, "Tell Dad I'm on my way." I hit send before I could overthink it. Tess watched me. That felt like a decision. "It was," I said. She nodded, then took a breath like she was about to make her own. Her phone buzzed again. She looked, then laughed without humor. "What now?" I asked. Tess held it up. A message from someone labeled Miles. "Client wants names. Who approved the path change? Call me now." Tess stared at it like it was a snake. "Boss?" I asked. "Producer," she said. "He's the guy with the voice." The familiar voice. Tess's nostrils flared. She set the phone down, face tight. "You'll make this my fault, even though I said no." I leaned in slightly. "Did you say no in writing?" She blinked. "Yes." "Then you have leverage," I said. Tess laughed once, incredulous. "You sound like you've handled people like him." "Every night," I said. "Different outfits. Same hunger." Tess stared at the message again. "If I call him, he'll pull me back in." "Then don't call," I said. "It's not that easy," she snapped, then immediately softened, guilty. "Sorry." "It's okay," I said. "It is hard. But you're already leaving." Tess's hands trembled slightly. She wrapped them around the coffee cup again, grounding herself. "What if he ruins me?" she asked quietly. I looked at her. "He can't ruin you unless you hand him the parts he needs." She stared at me like she was weighing whether to believe that. I added, "He can make it uncomfortable. He can make you angry. He can make you doubt yourself. But you're still you on the other side." Tess swallowed. "You talk like someone who's been on the other side." I nodded once. "I have." We sat in silence for a moment. The airport outside the bar looked the same, but it felt different. Like the night had shifted. Tess picked up her phone and typed something. Her thumbs moved fast. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Texting him," she said, voice steady. "Not calling." She held the phone up briefly so I could see. "I warned you the path change risked FAA issues. I have that in writing. I'm boarding when flights resume. We can discuss after I land." She hit send before she could second-guess it. Then she set the phone down and let out a long breath, shoulders dropping like she'd been holding them up for years. I smiled, small. "That was clean." Tess looked at me, eyes bright in a new way. "That was terrifying." "Both can be true," I said. She laughed, and this time it sounded like relief. A chime sounded in the concourse. An announcement. "Attention passengers for Flight 418 to Seattle. We are now anticipating a departure at approximately 4:25 a.m. Please remain in the gate area for further updates." Tess groaned. "They just pushed it again." "We still have time," I said. Tess looked at me, and for a second the air between us felt charged. Not in a dramatic way, just in that quiet way when two people realize they've been seen. "You're good company," she said softly. The phrase hit me harder than it should have. "Same," I said. Tess glanced away first, like she needed to. She lifted her coffee cup. "To stolen time." I lifted mine. "To the airport lying." We clinked cups gently. After that, we talked about smaller things for a while. Music, places we'd lived. Tess told me she'd grown up in a town where everyone knew your business and pretended they didn't. I told her about my first month in Vegas, how I'd walked down Fremont at midnight and felt like I'd stepped into a dream someone else was controlling. "You ever go to the top of a parking garage at night?" Tess asked. I blinked. "Yeah, it's the best view," she said. "Not the strip, not the postcard. The rest of it, the neighborhoods, the dark patches, the way the city is just a bunch of people trying to make it." I nodded slowly. "I know that view." Tess's eyes softened again. "You should leave." It wasn't a command. It was a wish. I looked at her. "So should you." I am, she said, and her voice carried a stubbornness I admired. We paid for the coffee, too much for what it was, and walked back to the gate together. The crowd had shifted. People were more sprawled now, patience worn thin. Some slept with mouths open. Others scrolled their phones like it was a lifeline. At the gate desk, the agent looked like she'd aged 5 years in an hour. Tess and I found 2 seats near each other, miracle, and sat down. For a moment we just existed, shoulder to shoulder in public, still private. Tess said, "Do you believe in Vegas connections?" I glanced at her. Like fate? No, she said. Like the thing where you meet someone here and it feels intense because the city compresses time. Like 2 hours in Vegas is worth 2 weeks anywhere else. I thought about it. About how people fall in love over roulette. About how they cry in elevators with strangers. About how the city makes you honest because it's too loud for lies. Yeah, I said finally. I believe in that. Tess nodded, satisfied. Good, because I feel like I've known you longer than I have. My chest tightened. I kept my voice light. That's the coffee talking. Tess smirked. It's terrible coffee. It can't do that. We sat quietly again, and I realized something. I didn't want the plane to board. Not because I wanted to stay in Vegas, God no. Not because I wanted to avoid my father. Because if the plane boarded, this little pocket of time would end. And time like this doesn't come back. Tess broke the silence. Tell me about your dad. I blinked. What? Tell me something real, she said. Not medical facts. Who is he? I swallowed. I could have given her a clean answer. He's a good man. People say that like it covers everything. But Tess had asked the right way. My dad is stubborn, I said. The kind of stubborn that looks like strength until you realize it's fear. Tess nodded. Go on. He worked construction his whole life, I continued. Never took a day off unless he was forced. He thought rest was weakness. Tess's eyes stayed on my face, steady. When I moved to Vegas, I said, he acted like he didn't care. Like I was just doing a phase. But he called my sister every week asking if I'd found a real job yet. Tess smiled faintly. Casino security counts as real. Not in his head, I said. In his head, Vegas is a place where good boys go bad. Tess's smile faded. And did you? I looked at her. Not the way he thinks. Tess waited. I said, I learned how to read people. I learned how to stay calm when someone's screaming. I learned how to stop a fight before it starts. Tess nodded. That's valuable. Yeah, I said, but I also learned how to shut parts of myself down. How to watch pain like it's a movie. Tess's gaze softened. And your dad doesn't know that. No, I said. He thinks I'm out here playing some kind of game. Tess leaned her head back. Parents are weird. They want you safe, but they also want you familiar. That's it, I said. Familiar. I looked at my hands. When he had the scare, my sister said he asked about me. Not like, is Nick coming? Like, is he still working nights? Tess's expression shifted. Because he worries. Yeah, I said. But he can't say it, because that would be admitting he feels something he can't fix. Tess nodded slowly. That's a lot like a certain producer I know. I glanced at her. Yeah. We sat there, letting those parallels hang between us like a thread. Tess's phone buzzed again. She looked, then huffed. Miles? I asked. No, she said. It's a friend. The one in Seattle. What did she say? Tess read it, then smiled slightly. She said, bring warm clothes, idiot. It's cold. I chuckled. Accurate. Tess tucked her phone away. She's a nurse. She's stable. That sounds nice. It is, Tess said, then hesitated. It also scares me. Because stable means you can't hide behind chaos, I said. Tess looked at me sharply. Do you have a script? Just pattern recognition, I said. She laughed softly, then looked down. Yeah, stable means you have to face yourself. I nodded. And chaos means you can blame the city. Tess's eyes met mine. Exactly. The gate agent's voice came over the speaker again, brighter this time. Attention passengers for flight 418 to Seattle. We have been cleared for boarding. We will begin boarding in approximately 15 minutes. A wave moved through the crowd, people sitting up, stretching, gathering bags. A collective exhale. Tess and I stayed still. 15 minutes. It felt like someone had put a hand on the back of my neck and started guiding me forward. Tess said quietly, "Here we go." "Yeah," I said. She looked at me like she wanted to say something else, but didn't know how without making it too heavy. I decided to make it simple. "Do you want to sit together on the plane?" I asked. Tess's eyes widened slightly, then she smiled. "Do you want to?" I shrugged, playing casual. "You're good company." Tess's smile softened. "Yeah, I do." We stood up with the rest of the crowd as boarding began, the usual zones called out in that tired rhythm. Tess glanced at her boarding pass. "I'm Group C." "Me too," I said. "Of course you are," she murmured, amused. "You look like a Group C man." "What does that even mean?" "It means you show up early enough to be responsible, but not early enough to be anxious," she said. "Wrong," I said. "I'm anxious. I just hide it." Tess's gaze flicked to mine, warm. "Same." We boarded when our group was called, moving down the jet bridge that always smells like recycled air and old coffee. Inside the plane, the light was dim. People stowed bags, bumped elbows, apologized without meaning it. Tess and I found our row, 2 seats together by luck or universe. I slid into the aisle. She took the window. She made a small sound of satisfaction when she sat down, like she'd been holding herself up all night and finally got permission to stop. As people settled, Tess turned her head toward me. "You're going to see your dad," she said quietly. "Yes," I said, "I am." Tess nodded once, like she was sealing it. "Good." She hesitated, then added, "Tell him something true." I looked at her. "Like what?" "Like, that you're tired," Tess said. "That you want to come home. That you're not a bad boy gone bad." My throat tightened. "I'll try," I said. Tess's eyes softened. "That's all you can do." The plane pushed back. We taxied slowly. Out the window, the glow of the city was distant, muted. The strip was a ribbon of light against the desert dark. For a moment, I felt the familiar pull, the city calling like it always does, promising another night, another story, another excuse. Then Tess spoke, very softly, like she was saying it to herself. "Goodbye, Vegas." I turned my head toward her. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't dramatic. She just looked, resolved. I said quietly, "Goodbye." The plane paused. Engines roared. The city fell away under us, lights shrinking into something almost gentle. Tess exhaled slowly. After a few minutes, when the seatbelt sign stayed on and people started doing that restless thing, Tess leaned her head back and closed her eyes. "You can sleep," I said. She opened one eye. "Can you?" "Not yet," I admitted. Tess smiled, eyes closed again. "Then tell me another story. One more, something that makes the time feel normal." I stared ahead, listening to the hum of the plane. The cabin lights were low. People were quiet. The city was behind us, but it still felt like it was in the air. I said, "Okay, one more." And I told her about the night a bride in a chapel dress ran through the casino barefoot, laughing and crying at the same time. About the way she grabbed a stranger's hand, mine, just to spin once under the chandelier because she wanted one more moment before reality took her back. Tess's lips curved, eyes still closed. When I finished, she murmured, "Vegas compresses time." Yeah, I said. It does. Tess's breathing slowed. She drifted toward sleep. And I sat there, awake, watching the dark outside the window, thinking about how strange it is that the city can give you something real right at the moment you're trying to leave. Not a miracle, not a grand romance. Just a human being next to you who says the thing you needed to hear, at the hour you needed to hear it, in a place that's built to sell you illusions. I pulled my phone out and opened my notes app. My sister's last message stared back at me in the thread. Dad's been asking. I typed a new note, not to send yet, just to hold the words somewhere I wouldn't lose them. Dad, I'm on my way. I'm tired. I want to come home. I'm sorry I stayed away because I was scared. I'm not scared now. I saved it. Beside me, Tess slept lightly, her hands finally still. The plane carried us into the dark, away from the neon. And for the first time in a long time, the delay didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like a gift, stolen time between flights, between lives, just enough to remind me what it feels like when a stranger becomes company, and company becomes something you don't want to lose. When we landed in Seattle, the morning would come fast. Cold air, gray sky, reality. But in that moment, above the desert, with Vegas shrinking behind us like a fading song, I let myself believe that leaving didn't have to be an ending. Sometimes it's just the first honest step. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you don't take it alone.
Under the neon moon, there's always another hand to play. Subscribe.